Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to take a look at ElementaryOS. ElementaryOS is a really beautiful looking desktop, and as it says here on the website, the thoughtful, capable, and ethical replacement for Windows and Mac OS. So what do they mean by ethical exactly? Well, everything in here is open source, just like GNU Linux, and so there's nothing in here proprietary in here by default at all. And also, other reasons, which we'll cover in this review. And I want to thank Steve Richards for asking about ElementaryOS. And Steve really wrote a very thoughtful and well-written comment here. He says, "Hey Jack, I know you love KDE and I use it too, but could you take a look at ElementaryOS? I have an older installation and I was wondering if it is still a practical OS to use as a developer. I have lost faith in GNOME some time ago. I think ElementaryOS supports Flatpaks, but can we safely expand the sources list to get packages from other distros like Debian and Ubuntu, and or add snaps, or find an easy way to install all the libraries developers often need? Not everything is on Flatpak, but a lot are, and ElementaryOS comes with some really nice apps itself right out of the box. What say you? Oh, to download for free, just enter 0 in the custom amount field." Well, thank you, Steve. That's some interesting points there. We might be able to explore some of that. In my humble opinion, adding different repos in there. I think this is probably based on Ubuntu 20.04 because I noticed that the repositories are pointing to the focal repositories, the focal repos, and so that's typically where you're going to see your Ubuntu 20.04 LTS and Linux Mint are using the focal repos. And so if you were going to update those and add in some Debian or something else like that, it's not impossible, but you could be asking for a little bit of instability. So I'm not sure I would probably go that route myself. However, they do claim that this is a great place to develop. So what do I mean by that? Well, as you can see up here, they have an area here for developers, and if you want to develop for the ElementaryOS App Store or for the project itself, ElementaryOS really has some cool features to make it easy for developers to create an app and put it on the AppCenter, or to get it into the AppCenter, and then even monetize it if you want to get in there and try to monetize and then charge like I think what they call it is a pay what you can type scale, and they'll have a suggested price on some of the apps in the AppCenters, for example $10, and then if you want to support the project, you can send them $10 or pay what you can, which I think even includes $0. So this way, it gives the developer an opportunity to be able to monetize their apps. And if they start seeing support coming in the form of monetization, then that gives them a message that this app is really worthwhile to the community. People are supporting it, so that will incentivize the developer to keep improving the app and making it better over time because of the support that that person's getting. Because a lot of these people have jobs and they're working in other places, and they do things like this in their spare time and donate to the community. And so sometimes it's hard to get that time set aside, and donations really increase that incentive for people to get out there. And so for any developer or creator or whatever, this is always a great incentive, and I think this is a nice system here. So I really like that, and that's one thing that stands out with ElementaryOS that I really like. And so here they're going on to say, learn about design principles with their human interface guidelines, get a basic app running, built, and ready for distribution with our developer guide that they offer. And then they're always open for you to contribute, to send feedback or propose changes to the Elementary platform itself. So their App Store or AppCenter allows you to get in front of users, and so new apps get featured with a large branded banner, plus trending and recently updated apps are featured on the front page. Nice. And you can also define your app's keywords, categories, subcategories to help people find it easier. And with built-in social media sharing and app URLs, users can easily share their app right from the AppCenter. Very cool. So that's kind of done with the app metadata. And then here they offer integration through their APIs for Stripe to monetize your apps. And then you get a minimum platform fee of 50 cents. And then there's a split payment between you and ElementaryOS. So Elementary gets 30% and you keep the other 70%. And then you don't really have to do anything except just be on their platform. And so you get all this exposure to all the Elementary users out there, which is nice. And Stripe is a really dependable, reliable payment system. I signed up with them years ago, back when I was doing some e-commerce stuff, selling physical products online, and Stripe is really a nice platform. And then, of course, GitHub. You can easily link into GitHub, and ElementaryOS uses GitHub for everything, so very nice. And I like GitHub. I use GitHub myself. So there you go. So for developing apps in the App Center, and I believe the main focus is on Vala and GTK on ElementaryOS, and most of the apps are probably GTK based and Vala as well. However, I believe you can use the language of your choice, actually, or widget set and all that. So really, really an interesting thing. And with that said, when it comes to developing other things, if you're working in other languages like C++ or Pascal, like I like to use Lazarus with Pascal a lot. That's really great. Python is another language I like, and the widget set I like with Python is WX widgets. So Python and WX works really nice, and you can even use WX Form Builder to create your GUI if you like a nice, easy visual environment, and combine that with Visual Studio Code or Code, which is the fork. And by doing that, and that's always fun. I think that's a great combination. I've made several desktop apps that way, mostly for our own business in the past, and gotten really wonderful results with it. And I've made some fairly sophisticated applications too, using just Python and WX Form Builder for my GUI. And that was a real time saver and got me to create some nice sophisticated desktops with tabs and all that, and just saved me a ton of time and made it a lot more fun to develop. And so on that sense, that might be a separate thing from, developing for the App Center. But Linux is Linux. So Linux is a great environment for developing anyway, all the way around. As far as getting your libraries and so forth, that also depends on your language. Python comes with tons of libraries out there, and being that this is based on what I believe is probably Ubuntu LTS, your libraries should be adequately up to date for developing most apps. If you need to really be cutting edge and you want to stay Debian, one platform I really like is Debian SID, unstable. Unstable is kind of a deceptive name because it's not really all that unstable. In fact, I use a distro for Debian if I want to be cutting edge. I really like Seduction. And Seduction Linux is based on Debian SID, and it is very, very stable in my experience. It's got the latest kernel, all the apps are cutting edge, and I don't need to depend on snaps or flatpaks, although they're available to me. But I can stay cutting edge, and I feel like I'm on Arch. I have control of when I want to do the updates because there's no auto updater in there that I have to turn off. So I just update when I feel like updating, which is usually every couple of days or maybe once a week if I get lazy. And I've also noticed that in Arch, sometimes I have problems after an update. Occasionally, not very often, but every once in a while I'll run into some issue after an update. That's never happened to me on Debian. Maybe I'm just incredibly lucky. I don't know. But the fact is, I really haven't ever had any problems after an update on Debian. So that really says something. To me, it feels like the opposite of unstable. So I guess if I needed cutting edge everything, libraries and so forth, that's probably the direction I would go there. However, ElementaryOS I think looks like an all-around amazing desktop for everything. And would I develop in it? Heck yeah, I would. I'm pretty sure I would. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to download this right now, and we're going to take a look at it. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm booting into ElementaryOS right now. And so I got everything loaded. I'm just going to hit try or install. So I'll hit enter. And now it's loading in. Doing a little checking here, but it's not doing one of those. But it's pretty quick. It's not like some of those disk checkers in Ubuntu where you got to wait forever. So there's a quick check it went through, and now it should be booting into something, probably a menu where I can have a choice of going into live or install, or maybe it'll just go into live. Let's find out. Okay, coming up to a screen here, and okay, so it wants me to select a language, and auto selected my home language, which is English. So we'll hit next or select, and then United States is good, so select again, and English US is correct for the keyboard layout. And then our input language, I'll stay with the default. And so here now we got a choice here. We can either go into demo mode and look at the live version, or just get right into the install. And I think we'll just get right into it. So for our install choices, starts right off here with either erase the whole disk and install it, or do a custom install if you need to customize your partitions and all that if you're a little more advanced. But typically all we need is erase and install if you don't have anything on there that you need to save. If you do have anything important on there, then you're going to lose it if you didn't back it up. So don't forget that. Of course, if you're in a VM, then you're good. So I'm just going to hit erase disk and install. And so now we got the typical VM warning here that if you're running in a machine, some part of OS might run slowly or not function properly, blah, blah, blah. So we'll just ignore that. And then a little reminder that this is going to erase everything. So if you didn't back up any important data and you decide to keep going, then you're going to be SOL. So be sure you don't have anything important that you're erasing. So I'm going to go ahead and check my drive and click erase and install. And I like that they double remind you about that, because sometimes it is easy to forget that maybe you're using a drive that you shouldn't be erasing. And I'm going to go with don't encrypt. Just keep it simple here. If you want to encrypt your drive, then just click the choose password button. So it looks like it's off and running. And so we got our splash screen here. It's looking great. I'm going to let it run and do its thing, and then I'll be right back when it's finished. Okay, it finished installing, and now it's restarting. I hit a rogue key too quickly, and so I missed the end screen there before I got the video started. But all it said was that it was complete. So yeah, we should be booting into Elementary any second now. And again, it's asking for languages, so I'm assuming that this is probably the last part of the setup rather than the beginning where we were before. So I'm just going to click through these, and there we go. So I was kind of hoping I'd see this. It shows I didn't screw up. So now let's give ourselves a username, because we didn't go through these steps here during the install. So it's logical that it would be now. And I'm just going to give it my funny name that I always like to use, Toadwick. And then that'll be my username by default. And then give it a password. And it can be anything as long as it's the same and the confirmation. And then a device name. And that's pretty long. I would probably just shorten that a bit. So let's try that. If you're on a big network, I guess that's good. But all right. And so here's our login screen, and it looks great already. I like it. So I'm going to log in. And here we go. I hit the wrong password. So let's try that again. All right. So now we're coming into our screen, and wow. Got the gorgeous ElementaryOS look right off the bat, and with our welcome screen, I'm just going to go off to the side here, right click and hit display settings, and just get us up to speed on the good resolution. So after I'm in here, I'm going to hit this little configure display icon and then click and select a resolution. So I'm going to go with other 1920 by 1080, and then we'll apply that, and that looks way better. So I'm going to keep that config and then just jump out of here. And I see that our closeout buttons are over on this side, kind of Mac-like. And of course we have a Mac-like look to it overall. And I guess with Windows 11 now, it's almost Windows 11-ish. But to me, it's very much Mac-like, which I like, actually. I think the Mac-like look is a nice look. And for me, it's pretty comfortable. And so up here on top, we have a top bar here, which I think is a universal menu in there as well. And then we got a search here. We can look at our applications and do a search right off the bat. And then these are the pre-installed applications. And here we have our AppCenter, calculator, calendar, camera, code, our document viewer, files, mail, multitasking, music, terminal, tasks, system settings, screenshot, and photos on the first page. And then over here, we also continue with web and videos. And this looks like kind of their own web browser. And so let's take a look at that real quick. It's kind of got their own branding on it. And so I'm kind of guessing this is probably based off of, almost looks like Firefox, but it could be Chromium too. If I jump in here, Firefox Sync. Okay, so I guess that answers that question. It's based off Firefox. Nice. And so it opens right up here to like a welcome page. And out of curiosity, I'm kind of wondering what the default search engine is. So I'll just kind of do a search for big widgets. And here it's got a little drop down so we can kind of choose. That's kind of cool, actually. So you can pick from Bing, Google, or DuckDuckGo right off the bat. So if I wanted to go with DuckDuckGo and kind of get out of the Google stuff, awesome. Or if I needed Google, then I could hit that. And then of course Bing. Bing is nice if you're looking for something to buy and you need information on a product or whatever. Bing's a pretty good choice there as well. Excellent. So there we got our Google results, and I like that you can kind of have a little drop down and choose from a few different search engines. That's very cool. Nice. So I'll jump out of that for a minute, and then here in our welcome screen we got a quick links to a basic user guide here, community support, and how to get involved if you want to get deeper into the whole development thing with ElementaryOS or with the AppCenter. Very cool. And then if we hit next, we can choose our look right off the bat. So why don't I just open up my file browser, and I don't see it down here, so I'm just going to come up and click on apps again, and then go back to my first page and hit files. And here's our default look here in the file browser. Oh, and I see you can scroll that left to right, right to left. Nice. I thought I could move that, but I can't. So I'll just kind of keep this file browser off to the side a little bit, maybe shrink it. And I think I'm going to keep it in this bar because I like having the file browser in here permanently. So I'm going to come down here and right click and then select the keep in dock checkbox there. And now it should stay in the dock even after I close it. Very cool. So let's see what our accents are like. It looks like by default, maybe none or clear. And then we can choose, like, here's a mint look. So if I select one of these, then you get kind of a minty color background. And I see that it's set for a single click. So you just click it once and you go right inside that folder. If you're not comfortable with the single click, that's something that you see a lot in KDE by default. If you don't like the single click, you're not comfortable, you can simply go and change that probably in the settings. And I don't really see a burger menu here on this. I'm not quite sure where you do that. Maybe right click here. But I think we'll probably stumble into that when we hit our settings here in a little bit. So we'll kind of keep that in mind. So it makes it a little harder to kind of, see our accents. Green is another nice one, but you do get a nice preview right here in the choose your look, so you don't actually have to come over here and click on something to see that accent for a second. But once we get this to a double click to change folders, then you can kind of see those. It doesn't seem to affect the accents over here, which is not a big deal, but I do like being able to choose my accents right here for our shading. And then there's kind of a bubblegum color, and yeah, it does kind of look like bubblegum. And then purple, and this looks like some kind of gradient, maybe. And that kind of looks nice too. And so you also have a dark mode setting, it looks like. So I'm going to click that, and it does. It goes right to dark mode. So there's a nice shortcut to get to dark mode. And I like dark mode. I'm kind of a dark mode fan, so I'm going to stick with that. And then here we got our nightlight settings. So it will automatically detect when it's nighttime. It probably pulls sunset data off from somewhere, and then it will kind of warm up your colors at night and make it a little easier on the eyes when your room is a little bit darker. So that's kind of cool. And so you can turn that on here if you want. And of course it's daytime now, so it doesn't really matter in this video. And then here we got, looks like a housekeeping. So these are things that can be automatically deleted after 30 days to save space on your drive and protect your privacy. So you can also include downloaded files. It's unchecked by default, which is good because I know a lot of times I have downloaded files on the PC, but I don't want to maybe delete them automatically. And then we have old temporary files and trashed files, and I think those are good to keep checked. If you don't know something's in the trash can after 30 days, then you probably didn't need it anyway. And so let's hit next. And then here you can connect to online accounts. So if you're using stuff like Microsoft 360 or anything like that, Google accounts and all these different things, then you can go on here and synchronize your emails and events, tasks, and all that other stuff here with your device, with your PC. And then the next one looks like the choice. You can browse the AppCenter if you want to download some apps. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to hit this, and there's our AppCenter. And so now we got some apps coming up, and that didn't take long to populate, actually. I know a lot of apps, package managers, visual, take quite a while to get populated the first time you run them. And this came in relatively quick, so I'm impressed with that. And it's also showing maybe 10 apps are installed and probably ready for updates. And here it's featuring a radiola, the simplest radio that can be. So this is a simple radio with clear and concise interface. You can listen to your favorite stations, add new ones, edit existing ones, and so forth. So if you're an app developer and you created this app, then you're probably happy to see it right there featured on the big screen there. Very cool. And then down here it shows all the apps that are offered for free, and then the pay what you can apps that are asking for a donation, so to speak. So here we got Communique, an RSS reader with cross-platform sync. So if we were going to click on this, here it's showing a price up here, and if you click on it, then this is where you get your pay it what you can option. So if you think $10 is more than you really want to handle, you could do $1, $5, $10. So here you can donate what you can and support the developers. So if Communique is something that really just works for you and it's just such a great app and it's coming in handy for everything you're doing, and maybe you're working somewhere and you have other users using it, you could probably convince the bosses there to maybe make that a utility bill and stick in a yearly payment of something, $20 or $50, whatever. And that really helps the developers a lot. So I really like that system. And I think you could probably even do 0 on there too, but I'd feel kind of bad about that, because if somebody's got a pay what you can price on there, that's sending a message that they really could use the support. And so I think that's good when you can support people when you can, for sure. And then we got games. So the categories are really nicely sorted in here, easy to look at, easy to read. So everything's kind of easy on the eyes. And here we can choose an office suite. As you notice, when we come up here under apps, we only have the very basic applications in here. We don't really have anything extra. And that makes it nice for customizing and tailoring your desktop to just what you need. And so maybe you don't want an office suite. It's nice that it's not there taking up space. And if you do need an office suite, but maybe you don't use LibreOffice, which is usually the default in most distros, maybe you like some other, like only Office. Now you can just choose from it. So here in the App Store, I'm in the Office category. So here we got all these Office related apps in here. And if we go down farther, we got even more. Events is a really nice PDF editor. And then we got Calendar, which is already installed. That's why it has an update. And we haven't run an update yet, so that's something we probably should do. But I'm not seeing the Office suites, so I guess I need to go back again. And strangely enough, I'm not seeing them in there. I could simply do a search, but to me, I kind of would have expected to find the Office suites here under the Office category. So that's kind of interesting. That tells me that maybe I ought to run an update first. So I'm going to come over here and it's showing all the updates, and I'm just going to hit update all and kind of let it do its thing. And then we'll jump back to that. Well, I go back to the welcome screen here, and it looks like we got one more item here in our welcome. So I'm going to hit next, and it's ready to go. Okay. So very cool. And then we have a quick link here to our system settings. So that was kind of my next stop anyways. I'm just going to hit that and open it. And our updater is moving along pretty quick. It looks like up to 570.8 megabytes there of updates, and just going to let that run. And while that's going, I'm just going to kind of stick to some benign stuff, like looking at our settings here. So here it's got it all categorized out here in applications, desktop, language, notifications, and so forth. So this first one under personal, if we hit applications, then here we can set our default applications here, our default web browser. So if you want something else and you install, say, Chromium, you can go in here and then just select Chromium and make that your default, and so forth for all the other different clients, your mail, calendar, videos, and so forth. And then here's where your startup apps are. If you need to add some apps that you want to launch at startup, that would be the place. And then here we have our application permissions. So these are given specific applications here on the left-hand side, permissions to these different areas. So for example, the calculator by default doesn't have permissions to any of these. And so then your camera by default has access to your devices, such as your webcam, microphones, and so forth, which makes sense because they're all relevant. But here you kind of have the options to give these different apps additional permissions if you need them for some reason. So that's kind of what this is all about. So if I needed my web browser to access my printer, then I'd probably want to set it right here. And I'm assuming that the web browser should be able to access that, so I'd probably turn that on, unless I'm missing something there. However, that's what that's all about. So that's kind of cool. And so I'm going to go back. Then here we have our display settings where we were before, and so pretty straightforward. Here we got our scaling factor, so we can scale it 1, 2, or 3 times, and then we can mirror our displays here. If you have, say, an HDMI, another monitor hooked up to it, or you're plugged into your TV via HDMI port or whatever, then you can mirror your displays so they both look exactly the same if you don't want them to be 2 separate displays. And then here's our night light settings, and by default it's still off, but you can turn it on here, and you can even set your time here. By default it's sunset to sunrise. However, you can change that all right in here. Pretty nice. Then we got our keyboard setting, mouse and touchpad. These all should be pretty standard, but the layouts are really nice. It looks really easy to get in here and configure these, so forth. I'm liking that. And here we got our show on screen keyboard, cap locks, num lock. I like the num lock on, so I'd probably turn that on. And then we got our input method, shortcuts. And so here we can add in our keyboard shortcuts for different apps if you want to pop them in here, and also custom, of course, as well. So here are your screenshots. I really like the screenshot shortcuts here by default. We got grab the whole screen, copy the whole screen of the clipboard so you can paste it right into a Word app if you want, or something, Word document or something like that. And then grab current window, window to keyboard, select an area to grab, and copy an area to the keyboard, clipboard. I like that too. So with a Control-Shift-Print combination, then you can select a certain area, it'll copy directly to the clipboard, and then you can paste it into a document. Pretty nice. And then your behavior settings for your keyboard are here. And these are things I would probably just keep at default anyway. But if you need something changed, like you want to change your blinking speed on your cursor, you can crank it up here. And then when you come down here, then it should blink faster. Actually slower. Oh, okay, because we're in milliseconds. Sorry. If you want it to go faster, you want to lower it. And so now it can go really fast. And I forgot what the default is, but I can go up to this marker here. So I guess the default was probably around 1200 milliseconds, which is about 1.2 seconds. Or it could have been 1 second. Nope, get that. Or I kind of like that you can adjust your cursor blinker right there. And then your repeat keys, which I would keep that at its default too, but you can just test it down here anyway. So if you're a super fast typer or a slow typer and you need to just kind of tweak that a bit, you can do it there. And then our mouse settings, and typically the primary button's set up for a right-handed user, but if you're left-handed, then you can come over here and make the right button your left click. That didn't make much sense, but yes. So for your single click to select something, you can make that your right hand button instead of the left button, which is the default for righties. So that makes it nice. Then your double click speed, you can hold the pointer still to automatically click. That's kind of cool. Dual click, a long secondary click, so you can turn that on if you want, or you can have a middle click paste. That's kind of cool. So you can use your middle or 3-finger click on an input to paste selected text just by clicking your middle button. That's kind of cool. That's something I would probably even turn on. And then we got our pointing settings here. So even the mouse settings are pretty nice. So you can adjust your pointer size here, and you can see that it dynamically changes as you select these. So that's really nice too. And then reveal pointer, pressing the control key will highlight the position of the pointer. So if you're constantly losing your pointer and you can't see where it is for some reason, maybe you're in a background on an app or something where your mouse kind of blends in, then with that checked, you can press your control key and it makes a little flash around your cursor every time you press the control button. So it makes it easier to find. That way if you forgot where your mouse button is and you're moving your mouse around, you don't see anything and you're like, dog, blame it all, where's my cursor? You can just hit that and there it is. Oh, it's way down there. Ah, now I see it. So that's kind of nice. Yeah, I can see where that would come in handy. And then you can also control your pointer with your keyboard, which kind of disables the levels of keys on your numeric keypad. So in other words, it would disable your numbers, and then you can use your arrows on your keypad to move your mouse up and down for whatever reason. Then you got gesture settings here. If you got a touch screen and you want to set your gestures up or modify them, you can do that here. And then you got your mouse settings for your pointer speed if you need to move that up, or acceleration and neutral scrolling. All this stuff I would leave the same actually. And then touchpad, if you have a touchpad like on a laptop or whatever, you can set it all up here as well if you need to modify it. But again, the default settings typically are what most people would just need. Then here's your power settings, so you can set it, your power settings here to turn your display on and off and so forth after so many minutes. And then here's our printer settings. So right now there's no printers available because I'm not hooked up to anything, but there's where you can easily set those if it didn't auto detect your printer already. And then we got our sound settings, of course, which look very easy to deal with. You got your output and your input, so if you got a microphone, and you can see me talking right there because my microphone's all hooked up, and that looks really nice. I like the rainbow colors too in the indicator. That's kind of neat. Very cool. And then of course you can turn your volume on and off there. And then these are your speaker settings, of course. And you can also provide audio descriptions for items on the screen. So if you have a hard time seeing things, that could be really handy. And then your speaker test, of course, for your right front.
Front, right.
And your front left.
Front, left.
Excellent. So everything's working A-OK. And then here, if you have a Wacom tablet, which I do, you can configure it here. However, my Wacom tablet's not plugged in right now, but if it was, I could just hit that and good to go. And then you got your Bluetooth settings, network, online accounts. So if you want to add in some online accounts there and manage them, you can do that all right from here and connect them. And all you got to do is hit add account. And by default, we got an IMAP or calendar account type to choose from. So like if you wanted to add in, say, Outlook, you could put in IMAP, or you could do Google or whatever, and then just kind of fill in the information and continue on, and you can connect with your different providers that way. And then sharing settings. So if you want to set up file and media sharing, you can do that here, and then it'll become visible on other devices and computers on a network. If you don't have a network, then it's not really going to help you any. But if you are networked in some way where other devices can see your machine, then this would be real handy, whether you're setting up a streaming server or you just want to connect the files on another machine or server that is also shared, then that's the place where you can make it happen. Then of course we got our date and time settings, screen time and limits. This is another thing that's, I think, kind of stands out with ElementaryOS, is here we could have different users. So for example, if this was set up for, let's say, your child, and you wanted to limit the time that they were on their computer or even on the internet, we could do that here. So if we were to turn this on, first I would have to unlock it and give my admin password. So let's say I'm the administrator, but there's another user on here and they don't have admin rights. Then, you know, they wouldn't be able to get in here and mess with this stuff. However, I'm the only user, so I'm just going to authenticate here. And so now I can set up these different things. So for screen time, I can limit the time. So for example, I could have it only available on weekdays from this hour to this hour. So maybe you want to limit them to 2 hours a day, maybe only from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Then you can do it here. Or this is in 24-hour time, so that would be 1,300 to 1,500 hours. So you could put that in here, and it's got a little icon, so if you want to select that, you can just kind of toggle the numbers that way. And it's showing here in the indicators on the notifications that the computer will lock after 7 hours, the way it's set right now. So that's kind of cool. And then of course weekends, you can change your screen time on the weekends, and maybe you can make it longer, like from 8 a.m. to 4 or something. So here's where you can do that. Internet access, I think you can filter websites with this. So if we go into internet, then if you don't want Mr. Toadwake going to certain websites, then you can put that URL in here. And so like for my son, I'd probably want to block IXL because that math website just tortures him. No, I'm kidding. But yes, so here's where you can screen out different websites. Maybe there's a gaming website that you think that doesn't have any really redeeming value, and you want to keep them out of it. You can put that website in here, and then that'll filter it out, so every time he tries to go to that website, he won't be able to get in. So there you go. Or she, depending on what the case may be. And then also applications. So if you don't want people messing with certain apps, other users, because maybe you have this computer set up for someone else, or it's in a work environment even, then here you can limit certain applications. Maybe you don't want them maybe you don't want them using the internet on this computer. It might be a computer that's intended for a different purpose, and internet might be one of those things that you don't want them in. So you can add your web browser in here and put it into the forbidden apps, and then every time they try to launch the web browser, you ain't going nowhere, see? So there you go. And then we have our system and hardware settings here. And so right off the bat, it's showing our OS, which is Elementary 6.1. And here, yes, it's built on Ubuntu 20.04 LTS. So that's what I was guessing at the beginning of this video. And so it appears that's correct. And Linux 5.11 is the kernel, dash 43. So our kernel is up a bit from the last time I checked. I think it used to be 5.10. So I'm glad to see that cranked up just a hair to the latest LTS. Nice. And then we have our hardware settings here and then some firmware information. So very good, that's handy. And then we got our universal access and user accounts. And here's where you can set your avatar if you want to have a picture there for your profile. And then you can change your username if you want, an account type. This is an administrator by default, but if you had multiple users on here, you could set someone up as a standard user or put a guest in there, I would assume. And then log in automatically. And of course, to change these settings here, you need to unlock those because you need administrator privileges. So you would just come up here to this button and just hit unlock. And then once you log in, those will be accessible just like that. And so now we can hit this button here and it'll log in automatically just by selecting that. Or I could change this, except I'm already the administrator and it wouldn't make sense for me to change that to a standard user because then nobody could do anything. You'd be trapped. So that's why that remains grayed out and locked, because there's only one administrator on here. Now, if I added somebody else on here like Bill the cat, then, or my cat, Pete the cat, then I could make Peter also an administrator, and then this would light up because then I would have a choice. There would still be an administrator on the machine. That would be Pete if I changed myself to a standard user. And I'd probably have to use Pete's password, I would guess, to be able to do that, and vice versa. So there you go. Those are all the settings. Nice. And I'm just going to get started here on this ready to go because we completed our welcome stuff there. And so that just kind of faded out nicely. The one thing I didn't see in there was the settings for the file manager. So that's got to be somewhere else. Okay, so regarding the single/double click thing, I actually took a minute there to go Google this because I could not find a way to set the preferences. And it turns out you can't. This is File Roller, and so File Roller does not give you an option to change it to a double click to access folders, so you're really just SOL if you don't like the single click, which I find kind of disappointing because this is really a wonderful OS, but I don't like that. I believe in options. I think people should have options. Now, with that said, you can hold your control key down and select folders this way, but if you're going to multi-select if you keep your key down. So you want to be sure to let up on your control key if you just select one folder and then click it and then you can go inside. And so there are workarounds, of course. And then again, if it comes to multi-select, you can still go out on the side here and then just kind of multi-select and then come down and hold your control key down and then continue onwards like that. So these are things that you can get used to. Or another option, I guess, would be to maybe use the console and just install a different file manager like Thunar or something like that. So that would be another option as well. Or Nemo, is another good file manager. So if it were me and I was installing this, that would probably be the first thing I would do is probably get a different file manager. But that's just me. But with that said, I don't think this would be too hard to get used to. But I think for elementary OS touting that, they want to be an alternative to Windows or Mac, to me that doesn't really seem like a good first impression for a new user coming over from Windows and all of a sudden they hit that folder expecting to highlight it and bam, they're inside it. So yeah, to me that's a little bit of a blunder, but I could be wrong. Personal opinion. And then if I'm going to focus my attention down here on the taskbar, this is really nice. I like the panel down here at the bottom. And so here we have our multitasking view. And so it comes right up and we can see our multitask. So I can hit Super F and then you see down here this little window in the window. So if this was the app that was actually running some kind of process, then I could maximize this guy and there it is down in the corner and I could just kind of stick that off to the side somewhere. Of course, it would probably make more sense if it was the other way around. So like I could close that and I could be in here and then do my Super F and then click on my web browser. And now my web browser's in the background here after I clicked over here. And so now, if I'm full screen here, and let's say this is not the file browser, maybe I'm editing in Office, then I'm typing away here, but I can still look down and see my video playing down here in the corner and really kind of keep track of what's going on while I'm working. I really like that Windows picture-in-picture feature here on ElementaryOS, so I think that is just too cool. Even makes up for the file roller thing. So that is the picture-in-picture. I really think that is really fantastic. So very cool. And so the only other loose thread that I can think of right off the bat is, and I just hit my screenshotter here. Nice. So I must have hit that by mistake. Right there, screenshot. Very good. So some of the other loose threads up here, we have our clock, and then quick access to calendar, and you can add events simply by clicking on a date and double clicking it, and it'll bring up our calendar app, which is also down here. And then you can add in our events and so forth, and really nice looking calendar actually. And here's where you would click to create a new event, and then it would come up here, and then you can put in a title and time and all that, automatically add a location, give guests reminders, and repeat intervals. So really nice looking calendar app there. And then here we have our audio settings, our network settings, our reminders, and there's also a do not disturb mode here. So I could turn that on, and then it won't give me any notifications while I'm working on something. So if I really had to focus on some kind of project, then I have this do not disturb, and we're good to go. That'll keep it from bugging me. And then of course our get out of town settings here. So I can adjust my user account settings right here, which is nice to have a shortcut to that. Lock the screen, log out, suspend, or shut down, which would also include restart. Excellent. So I guess the last thing I would want to look at is back here in our App Center. Earlier, I noticed that when I clicked on the Office category, there was no options for the Office suites, which I thought was kind of unusual. So I ran the update, and the update is completed, of course, quite a while ago. So I'm just going to see if Office is in here now, and it's not. So I'm not really quite sure what's up with that. When I do reviews, I like to do it from a perspective of a new beginner user to ElementaryOS. And so as a new user, I would be a little bit confused as to why I can't find an Office suite just by selecting that category. To me, it seems a little strange that it's not in there. It could be under one of these other categories for some unknown reason. Maybe writing in language or system, negative. Or maybe it's just something that's not a part of the App Center. But let's say I wanted only Office. Not there. So then that makes me think as a new user, well, how am I going to get it? And graphics, if we come into graphics, again, not seeing some of the things I'm familiar with, like Inkscape or GIMP and so forth. So again, to me, that's a little confusing, and even more confusing that I can't find it up here in the search bar. So I'm guessing, and I could go Google it, but I shouldn't have to Google it. However, having a little bit of experience on Linux, I would assume that I can come in here and just do a sudo apt search. Let's do a search instead, and then put in only Office, and it should be in the repos. Might need a hyphen in there or not. Okay, let's try LibreOffice. Okay, we have LibreOffice available in the repositories, and so I could scroll up here and just find it in my list to kind of see what they're going with. So I could scroll up, and here we got LibreOffice. So they do have it as just LibreOffice, which is great. So all I got to do then is sudo apt install LibreOffice, and then it'll come up. I can hit Y for yes, and then it'll install, and I'm good to go. And of course, it's always good to do a sudo apt update beforehand. But I don't think I'll install it right now. But it's nice to know that I can. But again, I'm a little puzzled as to why I can't just find it right there in the App Store. So I guess the other thing I would probably do on here is, after installing ElementaryOS, I would probably do a sudo apt install, I would say maybe GNOME software, because this kind of looks GNOME-ish to me. And so I would probably install GNOME software and use that as my main App Center for installing stuff like Inkscape and GIMP and so forth, if I wanted to do it in a visual environment. Personally, I'm more comfortable just using the console and just installing that way. However, I would assume that a lot of people that use ElementaryOS are really more comfortable in a GUI graphical environment. So if you want access to all those other apps, I would say you'd probably want to install something like maybe GNOME software or some other package manager. But to me, compatibility-wise, I'm guessing GNOME software is probably going to be very compatible with ElementaryOS. And so I would probably go that route and install that instead. So I think I covered everything here with Elementary. I can't think of anything that I might have skipped other than down here we have our taskbar, our panel here, and so we have a mail, and you can set up a mail account with this, and I think you can connect even to your Microsoft account through online accounts, so you could connect to your Outlook if you wish, if you're using like Outlook 360 or something to that effect, or maybe to Google or some other account like that. You can synchronize there, which is nice. You got a task here, so you can put in scheduled tasks that you to-do lists and so forth, which is nice, especially if you're a developer. You can kind of put out a to-do list and kind of go down that list, and for any reason, not just developing, but maybe to do all your errands today, go grocery shopping and do this and that. You can put them all in your task list. And then we have our calendar, which is where we were at, our music player, video player, photo viewer, system settings, AppCenter, and files. And of course, anything you want to add here, we can hit our control key, right-click on the panel, and go into panel preferences. And then here we can change our theme, even our position. So if you like it over on the side better, maybe you're a GNOME user and you like it here, well, not there actually, but the left. Or if you're used to Ubuntu, the Unity type, you have the bar over there, then you can put it over there, or even on top if you like it up there. And personally, I like the bottom. And then of course your alignment, again, you can put it on the left side, the right side, or just have it fill the whole bottom so it looks more like a complete or a semi-traditional look. And then you can set your icon sizes here, where you can make them bigger or slide them and make them smaller or anywhere in between. By default, I think that was at 48. I'll just pop it there again and just kind of tweak that. There we go. And you can manually type that in too if you really want to be picky. So I'm going to set that back into center. I like the center look, and I think the default is nice too, GTK, but you also have the matte there and the transparent if you don't like any background. So that's another option as well. So there, I think I covered it all. And if I didn't, then don't forget to heckle me in the comments. So what do I think of ElementaryOS? Well, I think overall, ElementaryOS is a beautifully done distribution. Probably one of the most aesthetically pleasing ones I've seen in a long time. It's right up there with Deepin as far as its beautiful looks. ElementaryOS features the Pantheon desktop, and just like Deepin, since I mentioned it, Deepin really the Deepin desktop only really works the best in the Deepin original distro. There's flaws in any other distro that uses that desktop environment, and Pantheon's kind of the same way. Pantheon really works best in ElementaryOS. When you try to use it in any other distro, it's just not quite all there the way it is in Elementary. So that's kind of a parallel I see between the two. And I know that's a tangent a little bit, but yeah, just something that came to mind there. But I think overall this is really a beautiful environment, especially coming over from a Mac or Windows. You got to adjust a little bit with the file roller. The Software Center, to me, why you don't have these other apps in the App Center, I'm not really sure. Maybe because the App Center is only focused on the developers that develop for the App Center. It would be my guess on that. But it seems like you would have another package manager available. I guess that's a debatable thing, because then you could be potentially taken away from the other developers, but I'm not quite understanding why you can't have the other applications available in that App Center as well, unless there's, again, something I'm missing, which is possible. But again, a beginner coming into ElementaryOS wouldn't know that if there is a feature, and I don't know that right off the bat without really researching it. So those are things that confuse me a little bit. And the file roller not giving you the option to go single click. Apparently at one time you did, and then they took it away from you, kind of GNOME style. They said, we're going to take a choice away from you. And they did. So that may not have anything to do with ElementaryOS itself, but rather the developers of file roller. And so that might not be connected. However, overall, I do give ElementaryOS a thumbs up. I love their support for developers, and the AppCenter idea for developers I think is something that's really going in a great direction. I think that's a cool idea, and I love the fact that it gives independent developers out there an opportunity to be able to get their apps out there in front of people and to monetize it. Really wonderful. So that's another thing that I think is a big plus. As a developer, if I was going to app develop for other platforms other than the ElementaryOS universe, then I probably would want something a little bit newer. It's hard to say, but I think I could develop apps just fine inside ElementaryOS if I wanted to keep the stability of an Ubuntu LTS base. But then again, I could just use Ubuntu, but then I wouldn't have this beautiful Pantheon environment. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to want to make a choice on a balance between cutting edge, stability, and having a gorgeous environment like ElementaryOS. And this really is beautiful. I could walk into a room and see this on someone's computer and say, wow, what is that? Are you running a Mac? Or what kind of computer is that? That's cool. So yes, ElementaryOS is really impressive in my book here. And for me, as a more experienced user, I can get over the little things like the file roller because I can replace it with Thunar if, I was hung up enough about it. And I use the console and I'm comfortable enough to be able to go in there and just install GNOME software or Discover or whatever I wanted to put in there as a package manager. Front end, Synaptics is probably what I'd put in there personally if I wanted something visual. Otherwise, I would just stick to the console. But again, being that it's kind of touted as friendly to new users coming over from Windows, those guys are kind of excluded out of like the App Store, other than just what's available in the AppCenter. So that's, I guess, the only flaw that I would kind of see in that whole picture. And again, if I'm really missing something, don't forget to let me know. But I'm assuming that if I missed it, then a newbie coming over from Windows or Mac, they don't have a chance. So my 2 cents. And with that, I hope this whole review here was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.